This is not my speech. As my wife would say, give them a 4-minute speech in 2 minutes, and you'll be successful. Congressman Guthrie, Judge Turner, Mayor Cruz, the Lincoln Days Board, Reverend Howell, fellow Kentuckians, admirers of Abraham Lincoln, and guests. I want to thank you, Phil, for that nice introduction. Appreciate it very much. Before I begin my remarks this afternoon, I would like to ask for a moment of silence for the latest Kentuckian to die in Afghanistan. 25-year-old Sergeant Patrick Carroll, United States Army from Nelson County, Bardstown specifically, who was killed Monday in a suicide attack. And to also remember all others who have fallen in our nation's history to protect our freedoms and way of life, which would include your own Lance Corporal Hanson here from Hodgenville. Just a moment, please. Thank you. Now, I'd like to ask a question. How many attendees here today are not from the Commonwealth of Kentucky? Show of hands. All right. How far did you all come? Or are you living here now? Living here now. Anyone else come from some distance? Okay. Well, we want to thank all of you for being here today and to ensure that this enduring event continues to be greatly supported because it is an important day, an important event for this area of our state as well as for our nation. So thank you for coming together at the birthplace of Lincoln, where this remarkable life had its beginnings, to reflect, to remember, and to celebrate. Now, it's an honor to be here and be invited to speak with you today. And I wish to again thank the Lincoln Board for their kind invitation to share some thoughts on our Commonwealth's native son, Abraham Lincoln. James Michener, some of you will recall his many writings. In the closing pages of his Korean War novel, Bridges over Toko Ri, asked the haunting question, where does America get her patriots? I'm not talking about the sunshine patriots on the parade field, but those who answer the call to serve selflessly and often give their lives so others may live free of tyranny and fear as free men and women. We know that they come from many places, just like right here in LaRue County. Regular folk who do extraordinary things. 202 years ago, such a person was born on the South Fork of Nolan Creek, just a few miles from where we are at this very moment. Later in Lincoln's life, he would say that I have been all my life a fatalist. Now, what I think he meant was that God's hand was active in the affairs of men. God's will be done, although his methods could try both men's patience and souls. I also think that fatalism and destiny can make for interesting historical coincidences. This was particularly true through Lincoln's life. Let me give you some examples. On April 12th of this year, we will celebrate the 150th anniversary of the bombardment of Fort Sumter, South Carolina, which resulted in President Lincoln issuing a proclamation on April 15, 1861, calling for 75,000 state militiamen into national service for 90 days to put down the insurrection rebellion by South Carolina. 4 years later, on April 9, 1865, the Army of Northern Virginia would surrender at Appomattox Courthouse, Virginia. And a week later, on April 15, 1865, 4 years to the day, after issuing his proclamation for the militia, President Lincoln would draw his last breath on this earth. He was 56 years old. As the nation mourned Lincoln's death, the words spoken at Gettysburg in 1863 would be etched on the hearts of many. His momentous work of preserving the Union from dissolution was ended, but he too had been a casualty of the Civil War. Those words, that the the nation shall under God have a new birth of freedom, and the government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from the earth. But I've sort of started this story at the end. The story I really want to share today is that of a common man from humble beginnings who grew to be a true patriot of exceptional metal. Now, as we go through these vignettes, I would ask you to try to place yourself in Lincoln's frontier setting, where there are no cars and planes and cell phones and iPads and TVs and radios and fast food outlets. So just take yourself back personally in time to the early days of Abraham Lincoln. Take as an example the story of President Lincoln's father, Thomas Lincoln, who survived an Indian attack that took his father, who was also named Abraham Lincoln, life. Now, some of you will recall the event where Tom's father was working in a field, and his three sons were within earshot of where he was, and they suddenly heard a shot ring out from a tree line, dropping Tom's father to the ground. His three sons were in the area. One ran to a nearby fort, one ran to the family cabin, and Tom ran to his fallen father. As he knelt over his dying dad, he looked up to see an Indian standing over him, ready to strike. When suddenly, he heard a thump of a musket ball strike deep into the Indian's chest. That had been fired from the cabin by his brother Mordecai. That single shot of the musket preserved the life of a 6-year-old boy who would, with Nancy Hanks 25 years later, bring Abraham Lincoln into the world. But for that shot, history would have been written quite different. No Tom, no Abraham, God's hand, or fate. It did make all the difference. When the family moved to Knob Creek, close to the Cumberland Trail, Lincoln was exposed to covered wagons and settlers heading in all directions, along with seeing slaves moving on foot, and politicians and lawyers going to session at Louisville. It was an eye-opening time in his life, being exposed to so many new and different things. In 1816, Lincoln's father decided to move to Indiana. Hope there aren't any Indianans here, but gosh. Abraham helped his father hack a trail in the wilderness, north of the Ohio River into Spencer County, Indiana. It was there that his mother died of the milk sick, caused by the milk cows eating a toxic grass. Life in the wilderness could be unforgiving and random, demanding an acceptance of the fact that things just happen. Fate or God's will. Abe was only 9 years old. His mother, only 34. He and his older sister and younger brother lived on. When Lincoln was 12, he was kicked in the head by a horse while leading a team of horses and knocked unconscious. The family thought he was dying, but remarkably, he recovered. Fate or God's will, once again. If that horse had won, American history would have been different. One day, while they're in Indiana, Lincoln's father, Tom, told his three children he was going to make a trip. Didn't tell them where he was going, didn't tell them how long he would be gone. He left the young children in the wilderness and traveled back to Elizabethtown, Kentucky, where he proposed to Sarah Bush, promptly married her, and brought her and her three children home with him. The one-room log cabin suddenly held 2 adults and 6 children. But the influence of Sarah on Lincoln's life would be significant. Fate or God's will, a mother's affection and guiding hand in the maturing years of a young man. When Lincoln was 19, he was hired to build a flatboat and to take produce down the Ohio and Mississippi to New Orleans. Now, he had never riverboated before, but took the adventure. I sort of think of Mark Twain's Tom Sawyer character when I think of this vignette. Now, Lincoln and his companion were waylaid by plantation slaves one night while moored south of Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Lincoln and his companion fought fiercely to escape with their lives and goods. And after fending off the attackers, he was left with a lifelong scar over his right eye. Was his survival, fate, or God's will? History would have been different if he had died that night. When he arrived in New Orleans after nearly a 1,000-mile river journey, he was exposed to a city of over 40,000 people, more folks than Lincoln had ever seen, let alone in one place. And all types of people, businesses, and opportunities in one place. His return trip was aboard a fancy steamboat. His world had grown so much bigger, and his sense of opportunities beyond those in the wilderness along with it. Faith or God's will. History would have been different if he had not left the wilderness of Indiana to take that adventure on that flatboat down the Ohio and Mississippi at the age of 19. On March 1st, 1830,